I'm so excited to be here tonight. This is such an incredible show, and we've got an incredible lineup for you. And we are going to break down that finale and everything else that we just saw. So I want you to give it up as I welcome out our panel tonight. Please welcome Visual Effects Supervisor Michael Enriquez, Production Designer Tom Meyer, Costume Designer Bojana Nikitović. He plays Desmond Hart. Please welcome Travis Fimmel. The Reverend Mother herself, Tula Harkonnen, Olivia Williams, come on out. Mother Superior is here, Emily Watson. And please get up for executive producer Jordan Goldberg. And showrunner and executive producer Alison Schapker. Hi, Alison. Hi, everybody. Woo. Look at this talent. First of all, congratulations on the show, and what a finale. I mean, gosh, Alison and Jordan, what a way to end it. I mean, this whole thing with, with Desmond, there's so many, like, how did you lead up to that, like, throughout the series? Like, what hints did you have throughout of who he was going to be? I'm talking Easter eggs.
Hi. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Desmond Hart arrives, and we had an Easter egg right from the beginning because he walks up to the palace and he has a little piece of black cloth. And it takes the whole season for you to really figure out where that comes from. But that's a connection to his mom. So I would say that was our private thing that we knew was in his possession from the time he shows up.
Wait, did anybody
from some unnoticeable part of my costume, which you never got to see?
That's right. You're totally.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay, tell us. What was that? Because I always love it when costume designers put Easter eggs into costumes.
Well, I mean, Olivia, you could speak, but when Tula swaddles her infant before she hands him to Sister Fran to deliver to his new home, she wraps him in her sisterhood robe and gives a piece of herself.
See, don't we love little secrets like that? Bojana, do you want to talk about putting that Easter egg into the costume?
Well, it was just that because the costume was so beautifully designed, it was so had so much fabric in it. I mean, they looked so sleek and spare, but actually sort of cutting on the sort of bias as Bojana did. But it was also something that Travis, used throughout the show. This piece of cloth that he would hold, and anyone with small children knows that the first thing that you wrap a child in tends, you can't ever lose it or change it because the kid will notice. So it was a beautiful theme that ran through.
Yeah. It was a good idea too to keep that, to know that finally we find out that that's the only thing that connects him with his mom, and we finally understand who she is. Jordan, were you going to add?
Actually, I have a question, because at what point did we know early on that it was the relationship? Was that baked in from way in the beginning? I forget. Yeah,
I mean, yes, it was. I think we always knew that Desmond was the return of the secret between Tula and Valya.
It's very cool.
Certainly the basis on which I took the job, anyway.
I'd love to hear from all of you about the books and how, because the books are such a rich, they're so rich for resources and in building this world. Mike, I'm going to start with you at the end and work up. Like how, what was your relationship with the books coming in, and how useful were they for you in building the world, especially for visual effects?
To be honest, I was aware of the books, but I never really actually tackled them, frankly. And when I heard that I might be on the show, I just basically dove in and tried to get an understanding of the franchise and wrap my head around it. And I found myself just completely enamored with them and couldn't put it down. And read the first book, read the second book, read the third book, kept on going, and found myself, frankly, becoming an incredibly big Dune fan. And there's such great intelligence and depth and nuance to the property. So really the books made me even more excited to be on this project than I was before.
Yeah. Tom, what about for you? I mean, can we just give it up for Tom and this incredible production design world that you built, the different planets?
Thank you. Yeah. As I went into the first meeting, and I think I was flying back, and I went into Book Soup, and I picked up a copy of Sisterhood, and I realized, because I think I had read Dune back in school some years ago, but I hadn't really gotten back into the series. I had no idea that there are 26 books. And I'm not the fastest reader. So my researcher and I formed a little 2-person book club. And there are 2 trilogies. And I only found that out in the meeting, like, oh, if you like that, you really have to start with The Legends of Dune. I was like, oh, God, how many? 5,000 pages? Okay. And by the end of it, you know, we were talking about it like it was school gossip. You know, who did what to who, what's the political dynamics. And what that does as a designer, and I think for all of us, is we want to be steeped in this canon. And then that allows us to kind of branch out and explore new ideas. But I think if we didn't have that really good foundation and that grounding, the audience would have smelled it. The fans certainly would have. But it's like you can't really abstract until you have your basics down. So I think for all of us, we were constantly talking about what the relationships were. We even made like a genealogy tree to kind of track all these families and how they were all going together. And we made it color-coded so it was easy to read. So it's that kind of stuff. And otherwise, the material can be kind of daunting and overwhelming. And this is a way to kind of get that confidence.
Wow. So I'm like, I want to see your boards and like this vision that you did. Bojana, what about for you? Like, how were the books instrumental in building your world?
Story. I read first 2 books when I was young, and then when I got the job, and I talked with Tom. We worked together before, and I went to his office. He was already in the project, deep in the project, and when I heard from him. He showed me this, you know, the whole three that they make, who is who. And I said, I would never catch this. I will never be on this level. So when I came back home, I bought the books and I started reading. Of course, I didn't read all 26 books, but I concentrated myself on Sisterhood, Navigators, and Mentats first, because that was connected with our story. And I really think without that, then on the other side, as you said, people who are Dune fans, I was so afraid to make any mistakes. So you have to be in it, and you have to know the whole thing to be able to feel comfortable and to do the right thing, the work well.
Travis, I'm going to come to you because what's so interesting is Desmond actually isn't in the books.
Thank fuck. All these guys have got so much pressure on them, and I'm sort of a introduced character, which I'm so happy with. But that I didn't have this pressure because, as you know, Dune fans can be very opinionated, which makes it so good. It's such a, you know, there's so much to there's so much for them to talk about. There's such a vast background on the show and that stuff. But I was lucky. I just had mummy issues, you know, and just a primal need to get love and that. And then that was one of the easiest jobs to do ever. You're working with these 2 clowns right here that are very, very, very talented, and scripts are good. So, yeah, I'm very lucky. Everybody had a lot of pressure other than me, I think. Anyway.
Wait, I want to know, how did they pitch the character of Desmond to you? Did they say he was someone with mummy issues, or?
Sorry, that was my diary. I was talking about... No, it was a while ago. How did you pitch it to me? Well, I actually can't... I just saw...
I do remember the word mommy issues coming up in our meeting. So yeah. I think, you know...
They didn't mention it to me.
No, I love the mystery of everything. And I love with this show that so many shows, you watch a couple of episodes, you know what's going to happen in season 5. I feel like this show is in no rush, and we know we're setting up for year after year and year. Like, there's a lot more to this. I think the most rewarding time will be in latter seasons where you realise this was building the whole time, you know. And so many shows too. It's and I've worked on it. Just every episode or every season ends up being exactly the same. You know, so I love that we're very authentic and not trying to rush anything. That's all I got to say.
Olivia, what about for you? What were the books? How were they helpful to you in building your character?
I have to be very honest. I was completely ignorant and was brought up to speed very quickly and effectively by our amazing showrunner, Alison. And I was following the scripts that she'd written. That was my prime material. But it was so richly written, and to step into that world, I felt I didn't actually want to carry the past in and just react to this. I mean, the main connection for me was with Emily, who I've known since we both started our careers, and the fact that we were playing sisters in this strange cross between a sort of medieval court and a convent. You know, it's absolute life.
Right at home.
Yeah, for both of us, we've both played royalty and nuns, and to kind of meld those things together and to be sisters, that was the real joy for me. And then to read the scripts, and you know that your day-to-day isn't the books. Your day-to-day is the words on the page, and these guys write beautiful scenes that you saw, you know. The recognizing of my son came hard upon a kind of reckoning with my sister, and this is what drama is to an actor. That's what I love doing. You know, between action and cut is the happiest Olivia Williams get. Don't tell my kids. And this play delivered, this script delivered day after day for 6 months. These beautiful scenes to perform, so that's what I fell for.
What about for you, Emily?
Well, I was pretty much a Dune virgin, and I have a pile of books, and I started, and I'm not a good reader, and also felt very overwhelmed by just really the facts. There's so much, and it's so beloved and so cherished and, you know, guarded. And at a certain point, I had to go, okay, no, I need to take a breath and go back to what I know how to do, which is to find me in this. And I felt, because Olivia and I, you know, we have a very similar background, and we trained in the theatre, and they felt like these recognisable historical figures in a way, these very powerful and paranoid, messed up women. And, that, you know, just as an actor, that's just a really juicy drawer to open and start going through the socks. You know, it was really delicious.
I had a drama teacher a million years ago who was old enough to be Prussian, for those of you who remember.
I'm Prussian.
Yeah,
I am. That's my background.
Are you Prussian? Well, you related to him. And we are related. And his great saying was, "Ducky, your subtext is showing." And the great challenge of this script and this finale that you've just seen was not to play my subtext, and the subtext that I couldn't even play with my sister. And then we had the joy of these fantastic younger versions of ourselves, you know, Emma Canning and Jess Barden. Shout out to them, because without, you know, they actually formed our characters. Yeah. Bravo to them. Yeah. Brava. And they gave us our adult selves. So, yeah.
Jordan, what was your relationship to the book?
Well, I mean, the books, it's hard to deny. I mean, the Frank Herbert's book is the cornerstone, one of the cornerstones of sci-fi. You know, so growing up, it's like you read that for the first time and your mind gets blown, and then you watch the movies getting older, and it's just constantly, you know, you immediately get in on the spectacle, and as you get older, you start to see the ideas. And we've been through the books so many times that I mean, this is depressing. I now see them like self-help books because it's like, I mean, because Alison is very big on like let's just find the emotional truth between all these large concepts, which is I think is what makes the show really work, particularly this episode. So we're always driving to that. But the themes of those books are amazing. I mean, it is, and this is where it gets into the self-help category. It is about evolution, personal evolution. I mean, these people go, the Bene Gesserit, they talk about the agony, and it's just like all three of these characters go through their own agony, their own personal agony, and they have to, you have to struggle to evolve, and it's stuff like that. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's sort of like you have to embrace the chaos in the world to find freedom, and so as I get older, I appreciate more of the real kind of emotional stuff.
Alison, were they self-help books for you? Like how did you read all of them?
I never really thought of them that way. I read Frank Herbert's Dune novels when I was a young adult, and I definitely, even now, when I could close my eyes and think of that book, and I can see myself on my bed in the attic of this little house I grew up in, and it's just very tactile to me. I feel like it was such an immersive reading experience and such a rich one. And there are not too many books that transport me in that way. So I had a lot of love for Dune, but I had not read Brian Herbert's books. Like I came to this project and discovered a whole extended universe that I hadn't quite come across. And it was an enormous privilege to kind of dive into the world of Dune and be working on a project associated with it. I agree with Jordan. I think the book continues. You can, even if you read a few pages or the whole thing, or you're reading it a second time or a third, it just really holds up. And I think to be emotionally involved with these characters has been so rewarding as a writer. I think that, and we've constructed a story where we're both tethered to the books of Brian Herbert's Great Schools trilogy, but we're also set a large portion of our story 30 years outside where those books end. So Olivia mentioned Jessica Barden and Emma Canning, and our young versions of Valya and Tula are very much in the novels, and yet some of what's happening in the present of our show is stuff that we're extrapolating along with the Herbert estate, who we work closely with. So I feel like we're in good hands. But it's been a wonderful mix of both honoring the world that's been created on the page, but also allowing ourselves the freedom to find the best story that we think to tell on the screen. So I love the books and I recommend them.
Love it. Well, let's talk about the finale and those final scenes. I mean, they're so emotional to watch. I think to Alison's point, at that point, we're all connected to these characters and invested. What was that like shooting those final moments for you?
Well, the greatest shock was I was quite upset that my son wasn't more pleased to see me, honestly. I thought it was going to be like one of those, reunited TV shows where we'd fall into each other's arms. So I was going for that. And then he clapped me in irons and had me taken away. So that, that was very painful, and it came hard upon a serious agony. I think the flashbacks that Valya had of Jessica in the snowstorm, I mean, that is such an agonizing scene. So, but the reality of it was mid-December in a industrial estate just outside Budapest, and the set looked very like the National Theatre car park, which Emily and I are very familiar with.
Yes, we were sort of invoking those above.
Was that your inspiration?
Yeah, no, it was as actors to have that sense of these characters who are trying to direct the destiny of humankind and save the universe, and Valya has this plan, and then she's on the verge of finding the truth, and she has this incredible power to be able, and strength to be able to survive what has killed everybody else. And then at the 11th hour is this astonishing betrayal. You know, it was chewy. It was chewy. It was yeah.
And I also, you know, visual effects, thank you for that, extraordinary. Because when you know that you're in safe hands, that whatever is in the script is cut to some agonising snowscape, that it's going to be created by visual effects department. You know, you can use that as your springboard dramatically when you're acting.
And it is also the moment that embodies, not sort of in a way on the nose, but the moment that is the philosophy of Dune, which is, you know.
I was really cold.
Say the words for me, Alison.
Oh, well, I mean, I would say, what does it mean to be human? And
or no, what am I?
Crisis, survival, advancement?
No,
perhaps?
not that one. My brain has just emptied at the possible. What am I trying to say? I'll have a think and come back to me.
You're just going to give your opinion on Trump.
We don't want to get
That's
deported.
another conversation.
Keep quiet, please. We're all on visas here. Watch out.
Michael, I was going to say, like, you know, speaking about that storm, how do you pull off something like that? I mean, I think throughout the whole series, there are some incredible visual effects, but, like, especially for that moment, what does that look like on page and then working, you know, with the team to bring it to life?
I mean, that scene specifically was quite difficult, just in terms of, yes, we had great performances. Yes, we had lots of wind blowing and, you know, a little bit of a portion of an ice surface built, but there had to be a storm going on. But not only is it a storm, it had to be a storm that involved not only white but black snow, and, you know, it needed to kick up and calm. So it was a bit of a tricky approach, but in the end, we really just replaced the entire environment. What we had there was amazing to get the proper lighting on Emily and on Jessica, and then eventually we just basically lifted everything else and built this entire snowstorm around them, and, you know, allowed it to fluctuate based on her emotional state, allowing it to go very, very dark, very, very bright, cracks and all that. But that was probably one of our most involved visual effects sequences in the show.
I'm going to get a round of applause.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious, how long did you have to turn that around? Because it's so interesting sometimes hearing how little time you have.
It's a little hard to nail it down because there was so much chaos, honestly, frankly, as we were trying to finish up post. I would say we maybe had about 3 months worth of time to really, once we knew exactly what we wanted and we kind of had to deliver, just hitting the ground running. Of course, we had time before to kind of get the pieces built and get a sense of, you know, do previews, do temps. But really, it was a big conversation between Alison and Jordan and everybody to figure out what the feel of that scene wanted to be, because it wasn't just creating a storm. It had to tell a story. It had to carry an emotional vibe. So there was a lot of back and forth to try to make that sequence work. Yeah, there was a lot that went in there. The moment where she yells at Griffin to swim, all the way to the worm sign that we saw actually in the snowfield before we go to Arrakis. Man, that was a big one. And then not to mention the surgery scene with Desmond and the whole lovely eye moment. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to say, I mean, I feel this way about everybody on the stage, like they're just some tremendous talent. And I can't tell you what it feels like to have collaborators who you trust their taste level. Like on some, everything Mike and I would talk about, or all, as we would realize, it was just so elegantly done. And I just think that's, you hope for that kind of synergy with the people you're building a world with. And I just felt I feel so lucky being up here with everybody.
We love that. Can I just say how lucky you are tonight to have seen this episode on the big screen, because we got to see the texture of Bojana's costumes. They're actually on display upstairs in the reception afterwards. Please check them out. But the detail, the work that you've done, a lot of it was, it's all handmade, right down to the jewelry. How do you make those costumes pop on screen? Like, what is the secret to adding that texture? Like, take us into your process.
Thank you. We really worked on texture. It was so important to me. I mean, from the very beginning, I was even putting something on drawings which I didn't know how we are going to make, but I was just... I had that idea for example, on Corino's, on Emperor's jacket and coat. I mean, I didn't know how we are going to make it, but I knew what I want. But when Alison is talking about, it's so important to have a good team. And behind me, there is a big team of extremely talented people that I've been working with. Some of them I've been working with for years now. And the thing that we made absolutely everything in our workshop, every piece of jewelry, every laser cut thing that we applied on the costumes, every single detail that you see on the head pieces and everything. So. We really did it together, and we were discussing. I was discussing with my closest collaborators, like my assistant and things. Like, let's see how we are going to do this. How we are going to do the red dress for engagement party or this, and then we find the solution. But it's really a process. Like Mike was, you make so many drawings and you make so many different options until you get there and you finally have something that you are happy with. And then talking with Alison almost every night was really, really helpful. It was really, and I absolutely knew each time, even now when I was showing something, I know what she won't like, because those are the same things that I'm not liking. And I'm telling my team, now when we have a Zoom meeting, Alison will say, but this thing, and it happens. So the taste, the matter, that thing that you mentioned, the taste that the same taste that we have together, it's so important. And I have to say, working with Tom again, we worked together before. It was so helpful, because I trust his taste totally, and I think we really talked a lot, and I was inspired by the things that he did.
I also want to shout out to Bojana because, it was a cast full of women in a convent, and they didn't cast by what were in my day called vital statistics. These were actresses of every shape and size, and to create a uniform for us that I genuinely looked forward to putting this thing on, which is saying something.
Have you worn it since? Do you wear it out or anything? Or no?
No, I would. I miss it. I can't wait to get back in my habit.
I can't wait to see this one.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. But there's that scene. I don't know if it was any of it in the finale, but where we were out in the amongst the rocks and this exposed place, and all the Sisterhood were having to do these really difficult exercises, and so these costumes had to be physical and formal and a bit nun and a bit sexy, and she just nailed it. And walking in them, they did this wonderful rustling flap as you walked. They were almost like bat wings, and they were just such a joy to wear. So thank you. And you could go to the toilet in them, which is very
Nice.
That's a great costume designer right there, accommodating for the toilet breaks.
Yeah.
Emily.
Serious consideration.
You seriously do wait for a long time for an actress to go to the toilet on job. So well done.
I know.
No, sometimes it's ridiculous, unbelievable.
You do sometimes just have to take everything off and start again.
Sitting there naked in one of those porta potties, So,
And all the rest was good, so...
I'm pretty sure you're texting and all that stuff.
Emily, I was going to say for you, what was it like for you getting into those costumes and everything?
Well, I had sort of my Sisterhood costume, which was the kind of uniform, which is very austere but felt very powerful. But then I had my whole, what we called my bat suit, which when I went to the court, and I had I loved wearing that veil because it's a bit like wearing a mask. It's just very liberating. And there's something about a character like Valya that the audience has to be able to tell what you're thinking, but the other people kind of can't. And there's something about wearing a veil that really helps with that. I don't know why, but it just feels like you become readable in a different way. But that whole, I had 2 capes and a veil and a hat and it took a while to get into it all. But it felt very powerful. It was really fun to wear.
Such an iconic silhouette,
I was swooshing.
Travis, what was your first fitting like? Take us back.
This is a girl question for the costume stuff, but I just wanted black because it's slimming. By the way, thank you so much for coming today. Thank you. I know you all appreciate how hard shows like this is to make and how much effort all these people put in. So I appreciate you coming and showing the respect. That's that.
There you go, Rand.
So my costume. Can you remember?
Then you saw the desert.
Oh, yeah. I hated the first
And then you were like...
And I'll wear anything. I don't care. You see me in life, I look like an idiot. But the first one was...
Yes.
I don't know. I guess sometimes everybody can get sucked in. This is how sci-fi is meant to look. And I think Bojana's done such an amazing job to mix it up. And she was so open to doing something different. And... I'm not a big fashionista, so I'm not really...
You like it,
but I love what you did in the end.
But then we did a desert one that looked good, but then we liked the shape so much, and then we made the black for Bashar, and that nailed.
Good work.
There you
Thank
go.
you so much.
Incredible work. Tom, we've got to talk about your sets. I mean, building the planets. It's such an incredible world. I mean, what was that like, having to build these worlds and also work, with Bojana to make sure that when you've got, black on, and it's a dark world. So making sure that your world pops against everybody else's.
Well, I'm really happy that everybody got to see it on a big screen, because I think as we're telling the story in our minds, we're telling a big story. So to get to see it on a screen like this, we weren't making it for the telephone at the bus stop. We wanted people to really enjoy it on a large screen because the worlds are so big. And we had a couple of things that we just laid down as markers to say, we want these to kind of be principal and foundational, that it feel grounded, that it feel real, that it doesn't feel like a science fiction out of a, brand new out of the shoebox, that it had a sense of history, that the stonework in the palace would have that oil rub from people touching the stone over centuries. And then in the Sisterhood, there was a real construction. I think the Sisterhood was built out of 12,000 of those little stones. And that was to give it this kind of cloistered, kind of sound baffling quality. That's why they're all at this little angle. So each set or each world had to have its own palette and its own kind of lighting and kind of characteristics. So when the audience is seeing these characters in this story, they're not getting confused and they wouldn't be mushing together. Like when you're on Wallach 9, we know that's kind of a dead planet, cold, irradiated. When we go to the Seleucia Secundus, which is where the throne and the palace is ruling from, that felt warm and had a more Mediterranean and more Earth-like. But to kind of explore all these options, Earth is a character in the Dune series. These aren't aliens that happen to look like humans. They're human beings, and Earth is the Gaia planet, extinct at this point. It's moved on. But we can use those touchstones of Greco-Roman architecture or contemporary painting, things that people will understand and find relatable, and then kind of think about what that would look like 10,000 years in the future. So the columns or the cornices or the details had a sense of grounding, but yet they were new shapes and new ideas that maybe the audience hadn't seen. So it was finding that balance between relatable and new.
The other thing that was noticeable about our planet was how damp it was. and when I said I was doing Dune, you know, the clues in the title, you think sand dunes. I was like, no. We were actually sort of regularly hosed down by a man with a backpack of water. And if anything ever got dry, it was immediately wet again. And on the first time on your beautiful set for the convent, there was a man with a sack full of moss, and he was packing real moss onto the set. I mean, and then watering it, and then watering me. You know, it was so beautiful, but it was very damp. And I go to a dry planet next week.
But I think that it touches to the other thing is we did build these giant sets because they're such big ideas. We have large cast that we didn't, and it kind of is counter to the Dune world. The Dune world is kind of a primitive future where machines and computers are outlawed, punishable by death. So we wanted these kind of big tactile spaces that the actors could get in and feel like they were actually in a real space, not in a blue screen kind of void. And then the audience could kind of, again, settle into something that was real. So yeah, we had to do extensions and a lot of things and expand the world and make sure that it went out to the horizon. But we just wanted to push that horizon as far away as possible with our real set builds.
No,
I was just agreeing. It was there. You know, the where the Bene Gesserit, you know, scene, that was a vast oval open air structure that was pre-existing that they dressed down to clumps of moss.
Yeah, I mean, this is a dream come true for us in VFX. I mean, we're not generating whole worlds based on nothing. It's not just, you know, an actor standing on a blue floor with a blue background. We actually had these elaborate, amazing sets that Tom
Who do you think did a better job, you or?
You did, Travis.
We're just two halves of a whole.
Hand in glove.
You know, no, it's kudos to the sets, kudos to the details. It's not often, you know, I'm walking around a set and like, oh yeah, this holds up in 4K, no problem. It's like this is a really well built set. So very, very nice work.
You were going to say something.
I remembered.
Oh.
Fear is the mind killer, of course. Yes, that's what that is, you know, is there in that finale. It's very present.
What was it like for you both to walk onto these sets and see your incredible cast in their costumes? Go for it, Jordan.
I mean, go.
No, please.
I was just going to say, well, it's very humbling, you know, and it's really exciting. I mean, it's just, I know all about that horizon between the set and the VisFX and where you want it. And I just felt like we had a perfect kind of marriage of a spaces that people could act in and feel and carry like the emotional weight. And Tom's attention to detail and that sweet spot of primitive futurism and finding the periodness of Dune, but also the not wanting the frame to sort of settle into just feeling like a period drama, but always pushing that futurism as well. I felt like Tom always I don't know, found that intersection so beautifully, and yeah, to build out and use VisFX in that way that adds to the verisimilitude of the production, you know, so we are really trying to ground our experiences as you know, creatives behind the scenes, but then also for the viewers, I think it translates to something really special.
Yeah, listen, I think all these departments, I think it's important because if they can deliver us the spectacle and the wow, it helps us when the moments get very small and intimate. It makes it pop because it plays off of such a strong contrast. And, you know, I feel like they did it and they pulled it off all the time. I was always impressed. I mean, I feel like it elevated the words 10 times better. Like the Harkonnen house is a very good example of that. Like, you know what I mean? It's just when you walk into that, everyone is just like, this is the greatest place to kind of play. And like, it's the words are like really cool down because it's, you know, the way it's lit and the way it looks and the way everyone's dressed. It's just awesome. You know what I mean? It's special.
Yeah, and I think that intersection of like the epic but the intimate, I feel like is very Dune as well, and I feel like that's where I just think these teams just shine. You know, their ability to kind of think broadly and, you know, transport you into different planets and spaces, but then also to be able to stay very human and to care so much about the small details as well. I'm blown away. But I'm very excited about what's happening.
You're all fired.
You touched on it earlier, talking about the themes of the series, you know, religion, politics, power. What does it mean to be telling this story now? Like, it's just a timeless theme, but also very timely.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as if Frank Herbert himself has a bit of prescience, I think, in his work. And then as elaborated on by, Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's work after. I mean, yeah, Dune's themes are incredibly current. And there's so many of them. I mean, I think the notion of technology or the dangers of technology, I think we're actually having that cultural conversation and probably should be more. But I think that's very Dune. I think the sort of issues around charismatic leaders, you know, what does it mean? What the Messiah and the tyrant and the what does it mean to pin our hopes on an individual, a larger than life individual? I think Dune asks you to think about that.
The dangers of eugenics.
The danger of eugenics, and do the ends justify the means? And
Beware your heroes.
Beware your heroes, and yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I really love about it is that, you know, Frank Herbert, he said this in an article, but I don't think it was, you know, people, we're all in this together. We're all afraid of the unknown. And in order to control the unknown, we grapple onto all these power structures. And then when something comes along, like a thinking machine, we glom onto it to kind of solve all of these fears that we have. And then we get unleashed from that, and we're right back to the hierarchical structures of power. And it's an interesting loop. I mean, it is a very kind of fascinating future that he builds out.
Well, I'm not going to let you go without talking about season 2, because I know it's been renewed, as I announced right at the beginning. Yes. What can you tell us? What are you allowed to tell us about season 2 so far?
Well, we're working on it very hard. We're very excited about it. I would just say at this early stage, I would say that in season 1, you know, we had 6 episodes, which is not a ton of time, and we really wanted to introduce you to the Sisterhood and its many aspects, you know, because they're not just one thing. I mean, they're an order, they're advising power, they're teaching kids, they have a covert spy organization. There was just a lot to get to know the Sisterhood and the palace and sort of the power games around the throne. But Dune is more than that, and we're rooted in the Great Schools trilogy. So I think you can expect to go to see what some of the different schools are about, and we're just going to meet some of the other players in the Imperium and power players. I think so. I would just say, if you're a Dune fan and you're wondering, you know, where are the Mentats? What's up with the Spacing Guild? I think season 2 will take you into some of that rich Dune world.
I love it. Well, I want to thank you all for that incredible conversation and insight into Dune Prophecy. Dune Prophecy is now streaming on Max Plus. You can go home, Max. You can go home and watch it again and look for all the Easter eggs. And thank you for that incredible conversation.